I can pretty much guarantee that any business owner will tell you that running a business is hard. Unless you went to business school, there are so many details and unique facets about running a business that it's honestly kind of hard to be prepared for. And many business owners are really just creatives. And when they get to the nuts and bolts part of a business, it can be overwhelming. But one of the best characteristics of a good business owner is understanding when and how to get help. It's important to realize what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and it's important to reach out and say, I can't do all of this alone. Maybe sometimes that means hiring someone to help you or bringing on a business partner who understands the other side of things. Or maybe that's even learning from someone else. Welcome to Business with Purpose. I'm your host, Molly Stillman of stillbeingmolly.com, and this show is all about bringing you the stories behind the brands, companies, and small businesses that are changing the world. Each week, I interview a business owner or a community leader or just an amazing person who is trying to make a positive impact, not just through their personal life, but also with their professional career. My goal is to show you that no matter what you do for a living, you can make an impact right where you are. My guest this week is Jacquie Moesel, the founder of Moesel Clothing, an ethical kids clothing line. But why I had Jacquie on the show this week is actually to talk about the apprenticeship she did this year through Purse and Clutch. This was a really unique and fun conversation, and I loved learning from her, and I know you will too. Now, on to the episode with Jacquie. Hey, Jacquie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Molly. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being on the show. I'm pumped to have you on. And today's show is going to be a little bit different because you have, and I don't want to give away all the spoilers, but you are newer in business, but you have gone through something that is really unique in the business space. It's unique in the ethical fashion world. You've been through an ethical apprenticeship. And so I am so excited to because honestly, this is something I know pretty much nothing about. So I'm really excited just to learn from you and kind of hear about your experience. But before we get into all of that, I want to hear the Jacquie 101. So tell us your story and everything that kind of led you to where you are now.
Okay, great. Thanks. So Jacquie 101. Well, I started about, I guess it's been 3 years now. So it's sort of the 10 years to overnight success feel of like, does this really take this long?
But I totally understand.
3 years ago, I started a project with a really dear friend of mine who is from Peru, and we've been friends for about 20 years. And we had started a project to design and develop children's clothing that highlights artisan work in Lima and works with small batch manufacturers in Lima, Peru. And the initial inception of that project really came about. He had brought some samples of work over to the U.S. I live in Austin, Texas, and he was visiting and had brought some samples of work. And the project itself, one of the major pieces for our work was to really try to provide ethical production. And there's a lot of complexities with doing that, working abroad, having all of those processes in place. And so I just launched, after 3 years, I just launched the actual first real collection. There's been quite a few attempts at samples and looking at the textile blends and designs, but I did just launch. It's been really positive so far.
So awesome.
Thank you. It's been great. And so really what led me to, I guess part of that Jacquie 101 is that I just as a person am also really curious and love learning. And I really approached this whole endeavor as a project, as something I was, working with my friend in Peru to do and to try to really establish a model that felt good to both of us.
Right.
And along the way, I felt like I really need help figuring this out. I'm actually not from a fashion background at all. I am from like a social, I've worked with social services, social programs, social justice work for, 20 plus years. And so that the part of working towards ethical production was a really good fit for me and made sense to do as a project. But I didn't have the fashion background, and I really, that's kind of how the apprenticeship came into play, because I thought I need to learn these other pieces that I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to go back a little bit before we get into the whole ethical apprenticeship part. So you mentioned that you have worked with social services and social justice. You know, where did your passion and your heart for ethical goods and where did this all kind of stem from, and how did you even get connected to Peru?
So the connection to Peru, so I have a really good friend. We've been friends for about 20 years, and he is originally from Peru. He had moved back to Peru, I want to say anywhere between 5 to 7 years ago, and he actually started ethical fishing, export-import business there, and during that work had become kind of increasingly interested in other opportunities for economic development and really helping Peruvians. Yeah. And it was really his idea when we first started talking about this project a couple years ago, to really look at kind of how to also use kind of clothing production to help improve economic conditions and economic opportunities for some of the artisans and makers in Peru, and in Lima specifically, because he already had some work with individuals who were doing some manufacturing and artisan work there. Yeah. So, I mean, it was a natural fit for me. I definitely, I loved the idea of working on a project that would hopefully, you know, if we can make it work, would help provide more economic opportunity. I personally came from a background of working with lots of different organizations, nonprofits, and other social service and social policy work. So I already had a strong interest in that. As a kid, I really liked fashion and drawing designs and doing fashion design. So that it also was very interesting to me in this other, you know, in another way, because I thought, oh, here is something that I do actually really like. And I became really increasingly interested in how to solve the problem of making really stylish and attractive clothing, but in a way that also supports a better model for people that are making the products, whether that's, you know, the US or abroad, or, you know, there's all kinds of models for ethical production. But it became increasingly more interested. And, I guess I hadn't, I've always been a shopper, so there wasn't an issue about not liking clothing. But I hadn't really thought, and I think this is something you find with a lot of people who kind of enter this world, I hadn't thought about all of the various pieces of the industry and production and how clothes are made. I mean, I, of course, had heard, you know, I've heard, you know, about ethical production, and I had been interested. I've always been, you know, somewhat of a person who wants to do the right things in the world. So, I had somewhat of a distant idea, but I really didn't know as much at all until I got involved in this. And actually also until I started working with clothing production and seeing how complex it is, how much time it takes if it's done thoughtfully and with the right conditions, and how intricate it is. I mean, from every step of the way, you know, the pattern making, the measurements, the ideation in terms of like what the fit, what's going to work, and then to samples, choosing textiles, working with, you know, locally sourced materials. I mean, it is. When I buy something, I can't believe we even have clothes. I feel like it's so much work.
It really is. People have, I mean, unless you're a seamstress or if you're some type of, I don't know, clothing, you actually have made clothes yourself, you don't realize, the intricacies that go into it. I mean, even if you just stop and like look at the clothing that you're wearing or the jeans that you're wearing and just look at all the detailing. I mean, the stitching, the rivets, the zippers, the buttons, the hem. I mean, it's just, there's so much that is involved.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think the process of me starting this project with my friend and really beginning the first steps of it, I've learned so much along the way, which also really helped to engage both of us and more in making sure that the process and the production pieces are that all of it is fitting a model that we believe in. And so it's amazing. And I know your listeners are probably some of the more aware and socially conscious people that do know these things, but I encourage everyone to just learn more about how clothing is made, what the process looks like, all of the steps. I mean, it's really incredible to see the amount of work that goes into what we put on our backs.
I completely agree. And this is one of those conversations that I feel like I want more people to be having, because I want to flip the conversation on its head when people, I'm at the point now where, I give so much grace, but it does kind of frustrate me when I hear people say, well, like, oh, why is that so expensive? And I just want to start saying to people, I want you to ask, why is that so cheap? So like if you go into Old Navy and there's a shirt on sale for $4, I'm just saying we should probably be asking why that is so cheap. Because we got to think about the cotton that was grown and the farmer that harvested the cotton, and then the cotton that had to be ginned, and then it had to be made into fabric, and then that fabric had to be cut, and then it had to be sewn, and then it had to be packaged and shipped and resold, and there still has to be a profit made. So how can you tell me that everybody in that supply chain, from the time the cotton was grown to the time that shirt is purchased, how are those people paid fairly if that shirt is $4? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And for me, I grew up in a farming family, so I've had an appreciation, I think, from a really young age about food production and that whole world. And I feel like there's been such a rich conversation over the last probably 15 years about the kind of food supply chain and how food is really grown and harvested, and now people have the opportunity to go to farmers markets, and there's a real awakening or a consciousness around food, but I don't think that's as widespread for clothing. And so I can really appreciate what you're saying. Is just, I would like to see that conversation happening more as well.
Yeah. And what was your motivation for doing children's clothing and not, trying something else? Where did the desire to do a children's clothing line come from?
Totally personal. I had a kid. So we started the project 3 years ago, and my daughter's 4.5 now. So I had a really small child at the time, and I was interested in what, in the market, what's available for kids' clothing, and being able to think about, like, how could we make really interesting, stylish children's clothing that are still employing ethical practices and really highlighting artisan work, which I just wanted to see the same kind of clothing that I would want to buy my child as well. So it was really just about, like, that's where my universe, was at the time. As we've done the work, I really like being in the children's clothing world, because it's, there's a lot of playful options in terms of colorways and, choosing different styles. Kids' clothes are cute, basically.
They are. They're so cute.
Yeah, so I think it's just like a really fun design space too. I mean, just to be able to work with children's clothing. I actually now because it's taken me a while to get the first launch. Now I want to design, like I want to at least expand the sizes because my own child is getting bigger. So I feel like, oh, well, I'd like to be able to see her in some of the things we're working on. So
yeah, she was the whole motivation for it to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, wait, she's outpacing my ability to get this to market. So, yeah. So I think in the future, I'd like to expand the sizes, but I do really love working with, I just like working with kids clothing. I think it's a fun space, and I wanted to see more out there that I would potentially have bought when she was, smaller, and also as she grows. So
yeah. So I want to transition now to talking about the ethical apprenticeship. And so for people that are pretty much like me, I mean, I know enough because obviously you and I have had conversations, and I had Jen from Person Clutch on the show, so I know enough, but I don't know kind of where this all stemmed from. How did you get involved in this? So give us the whole backstory and how this particular apprenticeship works.
Okay, great. Yeah. And I feel really like it's a great opportunity to talk about this with you because I feel like your audience will probably like this. I was in that space in terms of me finding it. I was really, I had a vision. I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I needed resources, and I needed more help to figure out how to do it. I live in Austin, Texas, so I am fortunate to be based in the same place as Person Clutch. Person Clutch is also based in Austin, Texas. And for those individuals out there who don't know, that company, that is an ethical production line of handbags and accessories, and Person Clutch works primarily with Ethiopia and Guatemala and artisans in both countries. So of course, I was very hungry at the time to figure out how to do this project I'm doing, and I wanted more resources and how to think about things and what, really how to create my own model. And I did find through just kind of the, searching on my own, the interwebs, Person Clutch. And they, I knew about them as well because they're in Austin, but I didn't know that they had an apprenticeship. And actually now, fortunately, they've broadened their scope, so they're able to actually offer the apprenticeship to people all around the world. So that's great, because originally I thought, okay, well, I'm in Austin, I can do this in person. But Jen had just recently moved the model to a Skype model so that she could engage people from other areas. So that has been great. The apprenticeship itself, and I guess like a little backstory for this for me, was I was finding a lot of opportunities for apprenticeships that focus on goods made in the U.S., which is fabulous. I think there are some really good programs out there to help people start their ethical fashion lines in the U.S., but I wasn't finding a lot that helped people think through the international models. Mm-hmm. And, there are so many nuances to the international model that I think you still have in the U.S. model. I mean, you still have quality assurance, you still have shipping, you still have production issues, but there's an extra layer of just really what that spectrum of ethical production is going to look like if you're working with another country, and the country, you're not living in that country, and you want to make sure that everything is up to standards that would be of the ethical vision that you have. So there weren't a lot of, I guess, those opportunities, and I felt really fortunate to kind of land on Person Clutch as an opportunity because their focus is a program that does assist understanding of ethical production in outside of the US, so internationally. There's also lots of incubators and accelerators out there, and I am doing an incubator now. So I wanted to do an incubator eventually, because usually those focus on your actual business and helping you get your business to the next stage. But I wasn't ready for that when I went to do my apprenticeship with Person Clutch. I needed to kind of walk side by side with somebody else's business and see, how does this work? Like, what are the pieces that I'm not thinking about? What are the things that I don't know? I mean, when you're completely new to something, you don't know what you don't know. And so I didn't feel ready for an incubator 6 months ago. I felt like I needed to actually shadow or see another business in operation and learn from that business's approach and have a better understanding of what that looks like.
Yeah. So would you say the main difference between an incubator and an apprenticeship is you're sort of just walking alongside them and really learning from their business model and everything that they do. And then the incubator is somebody that's maybe working more individually with you. I mean, is that sort of the main difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of models for incubators and accelerators. So I think they can have really different. I think they can look different depending on what the program is. But what I was finding is that incubators and sort of accelerator programs they're helping you specifically develop your business. And that can be like, the one I'm in now, which is also really great, is with mentors and specifically helping you with your kind of quarterly visions and getting you to the next stage, whatever that is for your program. Mm-hmm. Whereas an apprenticeship, I mean, I kind of think of it, back with, it's sort of like with trades, if you wanted to learn how to do carpentry or something like that, like it's a hands-on process where you're learning alongside somebody who is a master or expert in that world. And with Jen's program with Person Clutch, I think the design of the program is really excellent. She really sets it up so that you understand some of the macro level elements. So really looking at, what is fair trade? Why is ethical production important? Really looking at some of those macro level pieces is, I think, essential. And I really respect that she starts in that place and has people really dig into the whys of these pieces. And then she walks you through all of the different, really, I think probably all of the things that she's had to think about in developing her business, which is, how are you going to sell? What are your sales channels? And how are you going to message your product strategically? How do you build public relations? And how are you going to scale your project? I mean, so it is now what she does. When you're learning it, she's teaching you more about what Person Clutch has done and how they've gone through that process. So it's really helpful because especially if you don't have everything figured out for your own business, you're really just getting a window into how another business did that. And it was so helpful, Molly. I mean, every week I was so, I would just walk away with so much information that I needed to know so that I could help think through those specifics for me. And of course, we don't have this exact same company. We don't have the exact same model. I don't think that that the individuals who participate have to have the same model or kind of product line or any of those things. I mean, it's just really helpful to be able to see how another business has run or is running and apply that in whatever way makes sense to your own business.
Okay, I know you are loving this conversation with Jacquie, but let me take a quick break and tell you about the amazing brand that is helping to make today's show possible. I want to thank this week's sponsor, which is CauseBox. You guys know I love CauseBox. I talk about them all the time because I have been a subscriber of CauseBox since the beginning. I started subscribing to CauseBox over 2 years ago and immediately fell in love with it, and I have been a proud member ever since. If you do not know, CauseBox is a quarterly subscription box that comes out each season, and each season's box has a whole design and a product theme, but most importantly, every single product in the box is ethically made, fair trade, or gives back in some way. The products are gorgeous. You guys, the winter box just came out, and I just got it last week, and it is phenomenal. They blew it out of the water. It is such a great value. It's about $50 per box, and you receive over $150 worth of beautiful and unique products that are making a difference in the world. I did a live unboxing of the winter box on my Facebook page last week, and you have to go check it out, so be sure to do that. There are just a few winter boxes left. So the team at CauseBox has been so generous as to provide my listeners an exclusive coupon code for $15 off your first box with the code MOLLY. That's $15 off for the code MOLLY. Simply go to stillbeingmolly.com/CauseBox. That's stillbeingmolly.com/CAUSEBOX and use that coupon code MOLLY at checkout for $15 off. Now, if you have not heard my interview with Matt Richardson, who is one of the co-founders of CauseBox, you can go back and listen to episode 13 of this podcast to hear his amazing, hilarious, and crazy stories and how he started CauseBox. Now, back to my conversation with Jacquie. I would say that I think it is so important, and what you said and what you are doing is so important, that you knew from the beginning that you needed help. And I think there is this misconception in the entrepreneurship world that business owners have to be like, well, I mean, I just figured it out, and I just, I did it myself, and I don't understand why we can't just say, hey, you know what? This is an area that I, maybe over here, I'm an expert in this area, but I really don't know how to do all this other stuff. And so often I find just in creative business owners, whether it's a clothing brand or, maybe they're a wedding photographer, or maybe they're a calligrapher, or, they sell a physical product. I mean, even like in the industry I'm in with podcasting and blogging, I mean, so many of us are creatives. We are not business people. Like that is, and then all of a sudden we get thrust into this business world and we're like, oh man, I didn't realize I have to think about that. I didn't have to realize I have to think about that, and yes, you learn along the way, but you can avoid a lot of years of mistakes if you learn from somebody else. So I think I think what you have said and what you've done is so important for people to just know that it is okay to not know everything. In fact, it shows a sign of maturity, and it shows a sign of just being humble enough to say, you know what, I want to learn from somebody else so that I can do this right from the beginning. And yes, I'm going to make mistakes. Yes, I'm going to learn more along the way. But by having that foundation, you're setting yourself up for success much quicker than maybe if you had 3, 4, 5 years of really having to learn things the hard way, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I think that for me, I have a full-time job, I have a child, I have a family. I really needed to make decisions as I started this side project about where and how I was going to allocate time. And I think in this case scenario, age has been on my side. I've already been working in my real life, if that's what it is called, for 20 years. So I know how long it's taken me to develop expertise and subject matter knowledge in a whole other world that I felt like I guess there's no shame in my game. I was like, I need to know more. I need to learn this. I need to understand what I don't know. And I felt that it was really one of the best decisions I made in terms of time allocation was to dedicate time. It's about 10 hours a week with the assignments, you know, that you have for Purse and Clutch, that I wanted to spend the time learning. And I chose to do that in that period of time during the apprenticeship, because I felt that, you know, we can spend 10 hours doing lots of things, but I felt that sometimes you just end up, you know, Googling the things that you're looking for, or you can go down so many rabbit holes. And I thought, this is really a good way for me to learn more about what I'm trying to learn and just soak it up. And I mean, I really feel fortunate that the program exists and that I was able to find it. Yeah. And that it was available and that I could do it. I mean, because it just, to me, it really was something that helped me to just become a stronger business owner, basically, and entrepreneur. So I think people think that they don't, and it's kind of, you know, it's a lot to figure out, to put time into something else, but I think it's really worth it. And I guess I was a bit of an evangelist at the end, because I felt like this would have taken me probably another year to learn some of these pieces. And you know, what's also interesting is I think what you were saying too about, you know, creatives not knowing how to run a business, and that there's, you know, we all have knowledge gaps. I mean, that's for sure. And I think that one of the things the program does that I really appreciated is to provide tools and resources for the knowledge gaps. I mean, there's one session that's just about all of the different platforms and technological apps and solutions that you can use to help you with some of those pieces of the business, which, you know, I think a lot of that you just end up doing trial and error and figuring out, and you're not sure what's, you know, the best way to do things. So we don't all know it all, that's for sure. And I think it's just really great to have the opportunity to see how somebody else has developed their model, and you can really take what would be beneficial for you back to your own process.
Yeah. So if somebody is in that place where they feel like they want to maybe embark on a journey of doing something like this, how do they get involved with either Purse and Clutch's ethical apprenticeship, or where do they even begin to start looking at these types of things?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think that she's running now, she does the apprenticeships via Skype, and they have some video-based platforms so that they're, I think from a time perspective, the cohort can figure out when to best meet to have discussions. So that seems like a really good opportunity for people all over the world. And in fact, in our cohort, we had 3 individuals total, and one of our members moved to Indonesia, where she does the production for her project midway through the cohort. So we were trying to find time adjustments for all of us to participate in conversation. And so we were making some decisions about when to meet. And it's, I mean, you know, anybody could do it basically. Yeah. I think that her next application process is due in December, and there's on her website, or on the website for Purse and Clutch, there's a tab for apprenticeships. And I think that's a really good start, just to even look at whether or not that's the right match for somebody. I think that for me, it sort of depends on where you are in the process in terms of what probably makes the most sense with regard to a resource that's going to help you. I thought the apprenticeship was really valuable for anyone who is starting, who's in the idea inception phase or startup phase, and probably even in the production phase, because there's a lot on scaling. So I think it's really appropriate for a lot of people, even if they're just thinking like, I have an idea, I'm not sure it's going to work, I don't even know if I'm going to do it. You know, it still would be a valuable opportunity to learn what the business might take. And that could be a really good screening process for somebody. Yeah. And I think it's definitely worth it. And then also, if you're in production, which I already was in production, it's extremely helpful because I could think about the sort of next layers of actually marketing and distribution, sales channels, some of the things that were really coming up for me. And then I think if somebody is, further along in production, I mean, incubators are also excellent if they're available. Incubators can be really focused on tech traditionally, but there are some, for instance, I'm in one that focuses on social impact work. So not everybody's doing fashion for sure. In fact, I'm the only one that's doing fashion in my group.
Yeah.
But we're all doing projects that have to do with social impact. And it's very good for, I would say, the startup phase, production phase, whatever. Production, some people are doing service delivery, but, kind of their launch, I guess, would be the right word for that. So that you already have an idea, you already have like a minimum viable product of some sort that you're trying to get out into the world and really create, your scaling model and things like that. So incubators are probably, I don't know, there's all kinds out there, so I don't want to steer anyone away from that if there's an appropriate one for their project. But for me personally, that's been a really good match for a later phase of kind of business launch.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it's so important to take those steps to make sure that you're, setting yourself on the right foot to be able to, because as you know, and a lot of people that are listening that maybe are in this space and maybe they're not, this is not an easy space to work in. It's hard to own a business as it is. But then when you, like you said, yes, there are challenges even working in the U.S., but when you add in that layer of working internationally, when you're talking about everything from language barriers to accessibility of raw materials. And, I have a friend who owns a company who had planned an entire collection around a certain material. They had made samples, everything like that. They went to production, and all of a sudden, the people they were working with in the country were just like, "Oh yeah, we don't have that material anymore." Yeah. So and they're like, "What? What do you mean we don't have that material anymore? Like we planned this entire collection around this and this one material, and all of a sudden it's not there." So you have those types of roadblocks that can be really challenging and add just another layer of difficulty to the situation. But, in the end, it's worth it. And so I think that's really cool, too, how you said that Jen starts with the whys. Like, why is this important? And this is something I talk about a lot. So I teach a lot of classes on blogging and, working in the internet space. And I start every class, even if it is, no matter what the focus topic is, whether it's monetization or whether it's just how to get started or how to grow, every single class I talk about the why. And I say you have to focus on the why part of your business. And this, I think, is probably the most universal business advice I've been given and I try to give to other people is focus on your why, because if you don't have that as your foundation, you will burn out and you will quit. Because, when the times get hard and when you get to that roadblock or when you get to that mountain and you feel like you just cannot pass because of whatever this challenge is that's in front of you, the thing that's going to continue to motivate you is the why. And that's whether, you have a really big passion for working in a particular developing country, or maybe you have, maybe you're doing more of like a give back model and you are trying to, collect funds or positively impact a nonprofit or whatever it is. You have to have that greater calling. You have to have that greater purpose. And that's the whole reason for this podcast is we all, obviously, unless we're unemployed, we all do something for a living. And even if we're unemployed, like we're a parent, we're a spouse, we're a friend, we do something every day we do something every day. And if we continue to do that same thing over and over and over again, we can get burned out. But there's probably a passion or a drive that helps us to do that thing and get through the hard times. Even as a parent, like I think about parenting my young children. My daughter's, 4. My son is 1, almost 2. And, when I have those days as a parent where I am losing my patience and I have maybe yelled at my kids one too many times, and my husband gets home from work and I hand my kids to him and I go, yeah. I'm tapping out. I'm done. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to just walk out and never be their parent again, because my drive is my love for them, but also I want to be the best mom I can be, and I want to make sure I'm raising good, kind, generous children. So, it sounds overly simplistic, but it's not. I mean, it's important, and it's something that we all need to, it's something that should drive us and should motivate us, is that underlying why. And so, anyway, I just thought that's so important. I love that's a focus for you, and that was also a focus of this apprenticeship.
I think, and I was just going to piggyback on one of those concepts, is that I think having the why and sort of the core values, which is something that also gets talked about in the apprenticeship, is it also allows you to pivot, because I mean, if you're so focused on the product and what you're putting out there, I mean, 9 times out of 10, something about that product is not going to work. I mean, this whole business is iteration, like 100%. So, for me, if I were really focused on just, the sales piece of getting a product out there and being invested in that, I don't think that's a viable long-term strategy, because it's a learning process, and you also iterate based on what you get in terms of feedback from the customer base and what people resonate with and how they approach your product. So I think the why, I mean, in terms of for my business specifically, and I think for a lot of other people who are in this space, I mean, that's where that's your anchor. That's what you're always coming back to, is I'm working towards an ethical production model. I would like to support small batch manufacturing. And that's something I'm really interested in looking at. How do you create collectives of small batch manufacturing in the future? I mean, that's something for me. Those are what I produce, or like how it ends up coming out into the world, will be based on so many other factors, including, customer feedback. But like you said, maybe there's not going to be any more aqua, Peruvian cotton available. Yeah. So I'm going to pivot. So,
Yep. You just gotta be like, hey, it's cool. We're going to do something else and we're good.
Yeah. Because ultimately the mission is that I'm trying to produce economic opportunity for individuals and highlight their work and their artistry. So I am going, and already I designed to that piece, but that's the backbone. Yeah. How it ends up coming out into the world may shift, but that, at the end of the day, the backbone of the project will essentially remain the same. It may evolve, but it'll come back to the same purpose.
Yes. Well, Jacquie, this is the time of the show where we go into what we have sort of dubbed the lightning round. But this is the point where we just get to know you, Jacquie. We get to know you a little bit more, okay. and ask you kind of some unique, fun questions. So the first question, are you ready? Are you ready?
I don't know. I'm horrible at games, so I'm going to do my best. I was like worried when you said lightning round.
It's cool. And then this is also the part where I allow my husband, because he edits my shows, to insert a fun sound effect here.
I just want to tell you both good luck. We're all counting on you.
All right, so the first question, and this is a question that, so I'd ask some friends, like, what are some just really funny and unique and ridiculous questions that you could ask somebody to get to know them, or just to make them laugh? And this one cracked me up so much. It's ridiculous. It's an absurd question, but I don't care. It's my show, and so I'm going to ask what I want. Would you rather fight 10 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck?
Oh my gosh. Well, let me see. I'm going to go with would I rather, I would fight 10 duck-sized horses, right?
Yes, that was what I picked too. I
I would pick that because I'm a firm believer in just taking the next step, and like, everything is sort of a battle in life, right? So just getting the small things done, the small obstacles. So I'm gonna take that out to a philosophical place and say, like, you can get a lot of little hurdles taken care of, but I don't know, one big one feels a little bit more daunting to me.
I love it. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that is, and I think your reasoning is very smart. I wonder if there's some like psychological thing behind the answer of like, maybe like men would rather fight the one horse-sized duck. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to make everybody's head hurt. What was the first movie you saw in the theater? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know the very first one, but I would say like one of the first memorable movies I saw in the theater was E.T.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
And it was a pizza theater. Like they served pizza at that's a thing now, but
it is a thing now.
I don't know, 20 years ago, I'm not sure that was 15 years ago. I don't know if that was such a thing. And so that I was like mesmerized that you could like eat your pizza and see E.T. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I think E.T. was one of the first VHSs I owned, but I don't know that I saw it in the theater. And I'm going to admit, like, I was a young kid. Like, I think back, I'm like, E.T. was kind of scary for a elementary school kid to be watching. I don't know. I don't think I'd let my kid watch E.T. right now, but, mainly because she'd be like, Mommy, I have nightmares.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now we're going into the lightning round. This is either or questions, rapid fire. Okay. You just answer what comes to mind first. Or whatever answer it is first. You know what I mean. All right. Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee.
Cake or pie?
Pie, 100%.
Oh, what kind of pie?
Oh, girl, any pie.
Any pie.
I'm from the South, so
yeah, you're like
pie.
I haven't met a pie I don't like.
That is me.
Books or movies?
Books.
Pepsi or Coke?
A Coke, 100%.
Thank you. Yes. Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Tacos or burritos?
Oh, tacos. I live in Austin.
You're in Austin.
Molly.
I know. All of my Austin guests all say tacos. So, Yeah. Introvert or extrovert?
Oh, introvert.
Call or text?
Text.
Yeah, me too. Whenever somebody calls me, I'm like, oh man, really? I mean, no offense if you're listening and like you're a friend, you've called me. I mean, I love you. But text me. PC or Mac?
Oh, PC.
Crushed ice or cubed ice?
Oh, cubed ice.
Cubed. Interesting. This is the one that, so I'm a crushed ice girl all the way. And I feel like the answers I keep getting from people are 50-50. Like they're split.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting. I also like fancy cocktails. So I associate cubed ice with fancy cocktails.
Okay. Yeah. See, I like I want my crushed ice to be like real chewy. I want it to be like Sonic ice. Is my jam. Like that is my jam. There's also like a chain of gas stations here in Central North Carolina called Cruisers, and Cruisers has the best crushed ice. Oh man, so good. Well, Jacquie, that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for just sharing your vision. But also, I love how you just really kind of gave us the nuts and bolts of how this works and what this looks like, and that this is a good thing for business owners to do. And I really think it's going to encourage a lot of people who maybe are in that beginning stage of thinking of starting their own business, especially in sort of the ethical space. And I just really think it's going to impact a lot of people. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I hope all of your listeners, I think for me, I was looking for resources, and I hope that it's helpful to hear about some of the resources out there. So, and thank you so much for having me.
I admire Jacquie so much for what she is doing and how she wanted to do it right from the beginning. That takes such wisdom to know that you want to learn from someone else who has gone before and done it well. If you haven't heard my episode with Jen Lewis of Person Clutch, you can actually go back to episode 61 to hear that one. As always, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you are a first-time guest, welcome. If you are a regular listener, thank you for your support week in and week out. Your support really, really means the world to me. Be sure to head on over to iTunes, Google Play, Radio Public, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you are subscribed to the show. Clicking that subscribe button helps to make sure that you never miss a new episode. And while you are there, would you mind taking a moment to leave a review of the show? This latest review from Lemon and the Sea says, Molly does a great job choosing guests who really have a bigger mission behind their business. This isn't like a lot of other business podcasts because it's not all about actionable strategies, but that's why I love it. Every episode inspires me to continue doing more with my business. Thank you so much for that review. These reviews really do help me to know what you guys like and what is impacting you personally. And if you share the show on social media, be sure to use the hashtag Business with Purpose Podcast or tag me at Still Being Molly on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Another huge thank you to this week's podcast sponsor, CauseBox. Be sure to go to stillbeingmolly.com/CauseBox and use that coupon code Molly at checkout for $15 off. This show is edited by my amazing husband and executive producer, John Stillman, and the music is by Mark Killian of Third Wheel Media. Thank you so much for listening, and go do something good with purpose on purpose.